one.
Hi, I'm Jim Eskin, and on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it is my privilege to welcome you to this, our 24th webinar in our nonprofit webinar series. And I'm very excited about our special guest that will meet in just a moment. But before we do, I'd like to call on our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media. And he's been part of this team since our very first webinar. By the way, Father, was on April 1st. No kidding. It was our first webinar, and now we're at 24. So, John, would you take a moment and just acquaint people with the logistical background, and particularly how they can type in a question?
Yes, thanks, Jim. If you have any questions for Father David or Jim, go down to the chat box and you will see where it says Q&A. That's either at the bottom of your screen if you're on your laptop, or it may be at the top of your screen if you're on a tablet or your phone, and simply type in those questions there, and we will have our guest and Jim answer those in the order in which they were received. So you want to get those questions in early. That's it, Jim.
And by the way, I feel a little more confident that I have someone who has direct connections, I think, to upstairs. And so we're trying an innovation. For the first time, Father, we are going to put on the screen some of the folks asking the questions. We've never tried that before. We've been a little scared about the technology. But I said, I got someone who's got a local call to upstairs. Father David, I usually start, or I finish actually, with this quote. And it was from President Kennedy. Was a hero of mine when I was growing up. I'm from Boston. And he said these words when he gave the commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963. And I literally get goosebumps when I look at the words, because I think he's talking to us right now, September 9th, 2020, when he said the most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet, we all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children's future, and we're all mortal. I mean, that quote seems like he knew he wanted to leave some wisdom. I'm going to give a fuller introduction, but I want to bring on Father David Garcia, who has done so much for our community. I'm Jewish. I'm a member of Temple Bethel, but Father's one of my heroes. And Father, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And how are you doing this unprecedented time?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, actually. I have discovered new things, hobbies, new ways to develop myself, to grow in areas that I hadn't been before, and also to kind of reconnect with all kinds of people in my life. I'm retired, as you know. I was 44.5 years active ministry, and I've been retired now for about a year and 2 or 3 months. And
I'm going to share that the Father is very much of a fitness enthusiast, and that's part of his daily routine.
Yes.
Bicycling and going to the gym.
I have had a bike for years, but I would just ride it very occasionally, maybe once every 3-4 months with friends. But since the lockdown, it has been one way for me to get out of the house and to just fly through the neighborhoods and the parks and stuff. And I do it an hour a day, and it's fabulous. It has really, really helped my cardio and my overall health. And then, of course, I still do my workouts about 3 times a week. In fact, I recently returned to the gym after being gone for a number of months. And of course, at the gym, we all have masks and we all wipe down all the machines and that kind of stuff. So I'm feeling comfortable with that. I just go in and go out as quickly as I can. But it's some things in the gym that I like to use, so I'm there. So fitness is a big part of my life.
Father, there's something about a fitness requirement for being a clergy leader in San Antonio at Temple Bethel. We're led by Rabbi Nathan, and she's really in the cross training. And let me tell you, that ain't easy.
Well, I think you're going to have to tell that to a couple of our slightly overweight priests that we have in some of our parishes. They probably have to cut down on the tacos and the gorditas to be able to get back into some exercise, and they can probably have more energy for things.
Well, Father, we're very proud to have in our attendee audience the full diversity of nonprofit staff. We have board members, we have volunteers, we have all the different sectors of the nonprofit community. And we think each and every one of them reminds us that big question that one person can make a difference. There are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. There are 100,000 alone in the great state of Texas. There are 6,000 in the San Antonio area, and they all share one thing. The people who fuel the nonprofits, either they're professionals or they work hard, we just don't pay them, they're board members or volunteers or they're donors, is their passion for that cause. And that's such a remarkable trait. And we like to say when our nonprofits do well, we all do well, because there's not a nonprofit that doesn't touch, improve, and save more lives. And we like to say they were essential before COVID, and right now they're more essential than they ever been before. We started a little tradition. Our mantra is we're nonprofit strong. So I'd like to ask all our attendees to type in those words, nonprofit strong, if you could do that right now. And now I'm going to ask Father David the first question. What are we?
Nonprofit strong.
You got that one right. Andrea and I formed Eskin Fundraising Training in June of 2018 after a very fulfilling career in higher education advancement. And during my time, I had the privilege of working with some wonderful community and business leaders who served on the boards of the institutions I was working. And I noticed they were fearless in everything they did, with one exception, Father, asking for a gift. And I think like a lot of fear was fear of the unknown. So Eskin Fundraising Training is all about giving people the comfort and the confidence to go out and ask for their gifts that their great causes deserve. And we like to think that we can take anybody with the Jeffersonian virtues of a knowing head and an honest heart, and we can turn them into a great fundraiser. We're excited. We have an exciting slate of webinars lined up for the fall. And Father, we've landed into the slot of Wednesday to 4 to 5 p.m. That's our time, okay? And by the way, we're trying to say that we have 3 I's in our webinars. We want I, inform, that's me. We want to I, inspire, Father, that's you. And then finally, we want to I, intertwine, and that is our nonprofit partners, because if it was ever a time for them to collaborate, not compete, that time is now. We do a monthly newsletter, and we're going to send out, by the way, first of all, a couple things on social media. We're going to post a short summary on LinkedIn and Facebook around 5:05 when this is over. And then John Margin does a little magic act, and he gets the recording and slides, and we're going to post that somewhere between 6 and 6:30 tonight with a little luck. And by the way, if you're not on our monthly newsletter list, you'll receive the slides, and you can click on the PDF and add yourself to it. And I was proud. I think the more simple you keep fundraising training, the more successful you're going to be. I was proud to write my first book and publish it last year. Father, it's only 80 pages, so it's a quick read. And we like to say, you know, fundraising is really not that complicated. It's got 4 distinct parts: discovery, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. And guess what? even in this contact-free time, we can do each one of those. One of the people who preceded you, Father, was Laura Fredericks, who probably is the best known. She's one of my mentors. She's one of the best known fundraising consultants on the planet. She's been on all the major networks. And she pointed out too, that learning to ask, really, there's not a day that we don't go by and we don't ask ourselves, our loved ones, our friends, or for our causes. Asking is just an essential part of life. Until this time, when the Father and I did it, you know, the gold standard was asking face to face when you wanted a significant gift, and all the statistics back that up. And it wasn't complicated. You know, the toughest part probably, Father, was getting the appointment with the person that was going to give a major gift. But basically it was looking them in the eyes, asking them for a specific amount, for a specific cause, and then keeping your lips zipped, okay? But guess what? We're at a new frontier. And I like to say that, you know, handshakes are history. For I don't know how many years, Father, that shaking on it was a core part of any transaction. Well, we can't do that, but we're discovering that virtual fundraising can work. So at this point, I'd like to bring in, and Father, if it's okay, I'm going to trim down your introduction.
Please.
Okay, I'll keep it. Maybe that's it. We're finished. Father David Garcia recently retired, and he keeps on telling me he's happily retired after 44 and a half. We gave him a little credit. We're going to call it 45 years of service to the Archdiocese. And he was an amazing leader, including as director of the old Spanish missions. He is reverend, but to San Antonians all over, he is fondly called Father David. And he keeps on saying he's not a professional fundraiser. Well, I got to tell you, Father, if I was hiring a fundraiser and you were looking for a job, I would interview you, because during his career, he raised about $40 million we're going to talk about two of his major projects were San Fernando Cathedral and the old Spanish missions. And I remember hearing him for the first time, it's got to be at least 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And what I remember, Father, and what attracted me to you was the joy of asking and the joy of giving. And he said, he's got it. Here's a guy that gets it. So here's how the program's going to work. Father and I have, about 10 questions, and we're going to go through them. We don't know exactly how much time that's going to take. But around 4:30, 4:35, we're going to try a new experiment. We're not going to just take questions from the audience. We're going to put you on the screen. But I got to tell you, I might look like a gentle person, and my producer might look like a gentle person. But this is going to be like the presidential debates. We're going to cut you off after 1 minute. So please identify yourself, name your organization, and then ask your question. But Father, are you ready to begin the Q&A?
Sure.
Let's start. You know, and Andrea and I talk about this all the time. At the end of the day, it's up to each person to exercise really important decision-making for themselves, whether to embrace zero tolerance with no social interaction at all. And I'll tell you, Andrea and I have agreed to that, and I'll stop there. Or to choose to circulate wearing masks and trying to keep at least 6 feet away from the next human being. So my question to you, and I need help. I got someone visiting us from New York I got to tell this to. How do you suggest friends maintain relationships when they're choosing different standards?
Well, I think I can just basically tell you the way I've approached it. I think, you know, I certainly respect the fact that you're willing to stay home, and I have some very close friends who I would call semi-hermits, who are just perfect for this kind of a situation. They're great at home. They're great by themselves. They don't need to talk to anybody, and they're perfectly happy. That is not me. I am an extrovert off the scale, and
I would say that's a fair statement.
For me, you know, that contact is very important. So I started when we began the lockdown and we were supposed to stay home. I started with lots and lots of phone calls, lots of FaceTime, lots of emails and text messages, just a kind of a constant barrage, much more than I would normally do, simply because that human contact was so important to me.
Right.
Actually, I didn't look for it on the television, you know. I looked for it through whatever way I could reach out to people. So that was very important. The other thing that happened for me is I began to find ways to develop new talents and new hobbies, new abilities. So the one was the bike riding. The other one was gardening. I love to see things grow. I love to see color in the garden. So I began to grow.
What are you growing?
Well, I was growing peppers. I was growing broccoli. I was growing different herbs. I was growing spinach, jalapenos and habaneros and just a number of things. And I just love to see things grow. And I learned things. I didn't know everything about it. So I had to learn how to fertilize things and how to keep the garden going. Then, of course, once we got to the summer, I had to kind of water every single day or they would burn up. The only plants that love the heat are the jalapenos and the habaneros, and I can't wonder why that would be true, you know? So at any rate, that was when I think. The other thing that I think a lot of people have learned in the COVID era is cooking. I began to experiment with different kinds of cooking. I can make some pretty good frijoles right now, you know, and I can make a lot of other things. And then as things got a little bit better, I began to invite a couple of friends, and I have a patio in my condo, and I would serve dinner outside on the patio one-on-one, and that was another way to connect with people. And so, you know, there's ways in which we do it, and I think I think COVID is going to be with us for a while, but I'm also, I have to say, I'm also going to the gym 3 times a week with a mask on and wiping down all the machines. I have been to restaurants and again, following all the protocols. So I'm still standing and I'm pretty darn healthy. So that's just say it worked for me, and what works for somebody else about in terms of staying home, I completely respect that. But I have kind of developed a little lifestyle throughout this COVID time.
You might have an edge on us. You have some folks from upstairs looking over you. You paid your dues.
Well, to a certain
this is a question. Hey, this is
I was
a
going to
question.
say to a certain extent, but maybe not. You know, like we don't have any particular in. We do the best we can.
This is a serious question, and I think I have faced it. Sooner or later, we're all going to face it. What advice do you have for those of us who have to talk to family members or friends that have contracted COVID-19? And let me tell you, they're going through scary and difficult times.
I guess the main thing is to be sure that they know they're not alone. The problem with the COVID is that when people get COVID, no one is allowed to be near them and no one can go and touch them. And the human person is built for touch. Ever since we're little, as soon as we're born, we need someone to cuddle us and to hold us and to touch us and to kiss us and fawn on us. And when somebody is in COVID and their family and their best friends cannot get near them, that's a very difficult thing. So what we have to do is find ways in which we can get as close as possible to them, but more than anything, to let them know you are not alone. I am with you. Even though I can't hold your hand, I am with you. I think of you every day. I pray for you every day. I'll call you every day. Whatever it is that I need to do to let you know that you are not alone through this time. And I think that's the most important thing that we can give as a gift to those who are going through COVID.
And that's perfectly to our next question. And the pandemic has created very, very challenging times because we are wired for human interaction. What is your advice to people to keep their spirits up? We don't know how long this is going to go on. That's the truth.
I think the important thing is a number of things. Number one, we have to learn the virtue of patience. We can't always get what we want when we want it. And sometimes that's just a good thing to learn, to be patient, but not to give up, and to continue to work and continue to work within the constraints we have. All of us, every day, even without COVID, have a certain amount of constraints that we have to work within. That doesn't mean we can't still live our values. That doesn't mean we can't still get our job done. And we can find the ways to do that. And so I think it's very, very important to be able to say, this will not be forever. And if we work together, and that's the key to the whole thing, work together, meaning all of us have to have those masks on, all of us have to social distance, all of us have to avoid the groups of 10 or more, on down the road, all of those things that basically are a little bit of an inconvenience for me, but will ultimately make the difference for bringing down the infection rate. And ultimately, when the vaccine is available, that we'll be able to get over this and get on with a new life, not the life we had in the past. Yeah. I believe it'll be a new life. I think it's going to be different and profoundly shaped by this experience of COVID.
I think you're right. Our audience includes very many passionate nonprofit leaders. Some are CEOs, some are directors of development, some are board chairs, board members, volunteers. What would you like to tell them about the value of their work in the community?
Well, obviously it's essential because, and again, there's so many different kinds of nonprofits, but each one is contributing to a quality of life in the community. Some work with the poorest of the poor, and of course that's kind of like my favorite area, that with the poorest, that sometimes it's a difference of life and death, what they do. And that is so important, and they deserve so much respect for doing it. But there's also those that contribute to another quality of our life. For example, like say the nonprofits involved in music, music which lifts the spirit, music which allows us to dream dreams, music which inspires us, all those kinds of things. So, you can go through all the different kinds of nonprofits, and each one has a way of contributing to the community. I think our goal is to help the wider community, and specifically potential donors, to understand what is the contribution that our nonprofit makes and how they can be part of it, and they can dream the dreams with us, and they can feel identified with it, and they can make a difference with their gifts and their time.
Father, again, what attracted me to your approach was the genuine spirit of joy you described in asking people for gifts. And I got to tell you, you're atypical, not typical in that way. Most nonprofit volunteers will do anything but are afraid of asking for gifts. What would be your advice on overcoming the fear of asking for a gift?
I think for me, it was to never worry about someone saying no. I never took that personally. And I think really a fundraiser is really not a person who is raising money. I think a fundraiser is a person who is establishing relationships. And it's those relationships that work together so that from those relationships, from the growth of the relationship, from the commitment to the organization, from the belief in the organization, from the point in which the potential donor feels that they are part of it, that they're part of the family, that they own it. That they own it, that it's important to them, so much so that if I own something, I will invest in it. So I own my car, and if I don't invest in that car, it's going to fall apart and I'm going to be stuck on the road. So you get to the point where you're inviting the potential donor to be a member, to be a part of the family, to be welcome, to feel that they are somebody in this organization, so that ultimately they will say, yeah, this is me. And I want to help, and I want to be part of it, and I will do what's necessary, whether it's my time or whether it's my money or whether it's my contacts. I'll do what's necessary to further this organization, because this is now me. And I think that's very key.
Your portfolio totals about $40 million raised for San Fernando and the old Spanish missions. Could you reveal a little of how you prepared for the major gift solicitations?
Well, first of all, it was a long process. When I was starting at San Fernando, and I knew we were going to ultimately need to do major repairs, I got there in 1995, and I noticed there was a few cracks in the dome, and I was asking people, what's that? And I was assured that they were surface cracks, until a few months later when we had a study and they said, no, those are structural cracks and this dome will fall. We don't know when, but it will fall. Now at San Fernando, if you know the history of San Fernando, the dome did fall. I believe it was on a Christmas Eve about 150 years ago. So I wasn't going to take any chances with that. And we knew that we had a serious project. So one of the things that I did was I began to go to everybody else's fundraisers. I wanted to meet people who were doing this. So I went to every rubber chicken dinner that there was in downtown San Antonio for several years. Nobody knew me and I didn't know anybody, but I began to meet people, and I began to see how other people raise funds for their organization. And I began to meet people who give. And people who give to one organization often will give to others. And so each time I went to a dinner, I would leave some of my cards, but I would get some other cards of people. And ultimately, pretty much every dinner, I had at least one or two donors that were potential down the road. So getting to know people, ultimately winning their friendship and relationship, and getting them as part of the family, and then getting them to understand the dream. What is the dream of this place, San Fernando or the missions or whatever? And do you want to be part of this dream? Do you want to, and making the dream wide enough so that everybody felt that they could be part of it. And that's where the whole interfaith thing came in. That's where kind of presenting the San Fernando project as a community project, not just a Catholic project, which we were never denying it was, of course, but that it was a community-wide thing. And the missions the same way, that the missions were a community thing, even though each one was a Catholic parish. So, I mean, there's so much to that, but if I gave that seminar, I have to charge you a lot of money. So this one, I'm not charging you any money, so I'm just going to give you the bare bones.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any favorite stories to share about some of those major gift solicitations?
Yeah, there's lots of stories in any campaign, and they're wonderful stories, and you need to tell them to people who are in other campaigns or in the campaign so that they can get encouraged. I remember a Presbyterian family, mother and daughter, who had considerable resources. And I knew them and other people knew them, and we got them to come to the cathedral, and I gave them a tour of the cathedral. And while I was giving them a tour of the cathedral, it began to rain, and I'm talking pouring rain, just pouring rain. And so by the time we got to the sanctuary area, and I was going to show them the sacristy, I opened the door and the sacristy was flooded. And so the sacristy had never been flooded. And I was shocked, and they looked at me and I looked at them and I said, we can't go in there, the sacristy is flooded. And they looked at me and they said, you really do need the help, don't you? You know? So I closed the door and I finished the tour going out the front door. And ultimately I thought to myself, okay, very nice people, they're Presbyterians, they're gonna be nice, they're community oriented. we might get a $25,000 gift if we're really lucky. So the lady called me the next day and she said, Father, we're going to give you $500,000. And all I could think of was, let it rain, let it rain, let it rain. You know, it was just providential that happened. But it's a great story, and really, it was the truth.
I got to tell, I'm sorry if we have board chairs listening. It's not always that easy. Father, San Antonio is limited by its per capita income, lack of Fortune 500 companies, yet we have a very, very generous community. What do you think explains San Antonio's character of sharing and caring?
Well, I think from the, you know, we're a bilingual, bicultural city, even though we have numerous cultures, obviously, but predominantly bilingual, bicultural. And with a heavy Hispanic background from our very beginning, from the very founding of the city. The Hispanic mentality and the Hispanic approach is a communitarian, a communal approach. In other words, the community is very important. Yeah. It's not as much, I'm in this for myself, I'm going to pull myself by my own bootstraps. That's really not part of our tradition. Our tradition is really that if the community does well, I do well. And so, you can see that, for example, in how you have multi-generations in the same household, where they're all together helping each other out, you know, the grandparents and the grandkids and then the parents in between. So I believe that part of that is, even though the gifts might not be huge, there's a lot of gifts, and that people are giving a larger percentage of their income at the working class and middle class level than those at the higher levels that can afford to give the big gifts. So there's that spirit in the community, that communitarian, that communal spirit that I find very helpful and very good for fundraising.
Another tradition that San Antonio celebrates is ecumenical cooperation, in the way that the different faiths come together for the greater good. Can you share a story or two about your interaction with different faiths?
Yeah, we have a terrific interfaith community here. Going back, for example, to the 50s, when Archbishop Lucy, Bishop Everett Jones, who was the Episcopal bishop, and Rabbi David Jacobson, the three of them got together in the 50s and convinced the business community, the business leaders of San Antonio, that it was time to desegregate. And San Antonio was one of the major, if not the only major city in the country that was able to desegregate without a riot. And that was because of the strong interfaith religious leadership that said, you know what, gentlemen, it's time. We've got to do this. And the three of them made a difference. Now, in terms of my life, when I went to the cathedral, I joined the Downtown Ministers Association and began to meet people like Rabbi Sam Stahl and Louis Zabinden from First Presbyterian, Buckner Fanning from Trinity Baptist. And when it was interesting, because when I organized the cathedral campaign, I told the three of them, I'm putting you on the interfaith committee for San Fernando Cathedral, you know, and it was okay because I had a relationship with them and I was already working with them on different things. For example, with Zabinden and Stahl, we were working on downtown issues with the homeless, and ultimately that morphed into the Haven for Hope and other issues. So we were already having relationships of working together. But the beautiful thing was Zabinden, I asked him, would you please go with me to Ed Whitaker, who at that time was chair of AT&T, and ask him to be the chair of the San Fernando campaign? And Whitaker, of course, was a Presbyterian. Now, I had the benefit of the fact that Louis Zabinden had raised all the money he was ever going to raise, had bought all the property he built every building he was going to build, and he was ready to help somebody else. And so he takes me to Whitaker We had a wonderful meeting with Whitaker. Even Whitaker knew very little about San Fernando. But at the end, I made the pitch and I asked him to be the chair. And I said, we're not going to ask you to go to meetings. We just would like you to be, we want your name at the top of the list. We want a gift from you. We want you to call some of your buddies around the country who ask you for money all the time, and you're going to ask them for money. And at the end, you're going to give us a party to celebrate that we were successful. So he looks very hard at me, and then he looks at Zabindan, and he says, do you think I should do this? And Zabindan says, you should do it. You need to be at the top of this because this will be the most important campaign for the next several years in San Antonio, because this is downtown, this is the heart of our city, this is the history of our city. And Whitaker looked back at me, and I thought to myself, he's going to say, Father, I'll get back to you in 30 days. He looked at me and he said, I'll do it. And that made the difference in the world. As soon as he was on board, all of a sudden the business community took us seriously and really helped. And then two other quick things. When we announced the campaign, we were already at about 40%, which is always a good thing to do, to say,
Right.
From zero, we're at 40%.
Yeah.
But I told the newspaper person, interview Sam Stahl. So he called Sam Stahl, and Sam Stahl, I'll never forget the quote that Sam Stahl said. He said, San Fernando is the religious address of San Antonio.
Wow.
Now, this is coming from the main Jewish rabbi, the most important Jewish rabbi in the city, saying that the San Fernando is the religious address of San Antonio. What an endorsement. And then the last little quick story was Buckner Fanning. We would get together on Thanksgiving morning at 9 o'clock for an interfaith gathering, and we would pack the cathedral with everybody, all religions. And after one of those, I was outside greeting people, and I saw Buckner's wife, and I said, where's Buckner? Yeah. And she said, he's inside giving tours of the cathedral. So I thought to myself, okay, we are there. If the Baptist leader is giving tours of the cathedral, if the Jewish rabbi is saying that we're the religious address, and if the First Presbyterian pastor is telling his parishioner, you got to be the chair of the campaign, I think we're going to be okay.
Hey, by the way, Father David, have you done a fist bump on Zoom? I want to give you a fist bump on what you accomplished in that ecumenical. Put your fist there. We go. And tell you what, I still have some questions to go, but I'd like to bring the audience in. John, do we have some folks? And by the way, we waited until we had Father and his connection to upstairs to try some new technology. This is the first time we're going to put one of our attendees on the screen with us. Are we ready to go, John?
We are.
Okay, I think I see Sandy Holt.
Hi, Father David. Thank you so very much for inspiring us with your wonderful stories of how you went about doing fundraising for the San Fernando Cathedral and the missions. Love hearing them. I work for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, HACU, which was founded here in San Antonio at the campus of Our Lady of the Lake University. And indirectly, we work with a lot of college and university students, and they have all been thrust into such a worrisome environment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they're worrying about many things like their family members, food, housing, shifting to online learning, and whether or not they have the hardware and also broadband access, and not being able to interact with their peers, which is a very important aspect of their lives when they are college and university students. What advice do you have for them to enjoy some kind of normal college life in this environment?
Well, it is a tough environment for a college student. I mean, I went away myself at one point, grad school at Notre Dame University, and it had been the first time I ever lived outside of San Antonio. And even though it's the same country, the Midwest is a whole different scene, and really, to me, culturally very different. So there's a number of issues, especially when you're talking about, in your organization, Hispanic students. In many cases, they're going to be the first one ever in their family to go to the university or to the college. And that's a really key thing. and remembering again what I said earlier, that the Hispanic communitarian kind of value system and the strong connection to family, they're going to be missing family, especially if they're away, if they're in the dorm. But at the same time, the college experience is so key of living on campus and beginning to learn new relationships, beginning to not only go to school, but beginning to kind of set up your value system for your life, and making the relationships that in some cases will be friends for the rest of your life. And so they need a lot of support. Their family has to kind of constantly be talking to them. I think they need a lot of financial support, because many of them who are coming from families of modest means, they're not going to have the kind of money to be able to go out and this semester anyway, they're not going to be able to go out much at all, because I understand the universities are going to be super strict, and they already are, in terms of what the student can and cannot do. So really, my main advice to them is stay in close contact with your family, begin to develop the relationships that will be supportive, relationships of confidence and trust. Always have a good, like a counselor or one of the professors or one of the university officials that you can go to. I had an incident just last week of one of the young people from Mission Concepcion, who's for the first time in the family going to a university, and he's way out in Sul Ross in West Texas, and he had a bit of an issue with some of the money that he didn't think he owed, and then they thought he owed it, and so he sent me a text, and so then I kind of got a hold of other people, and ultimately it was ironed out. But the fact is, he didn't have any idea what to do and how to do it, and so he was relying on the priest back home to help him out, which I was happy to do if I could. But those are the good kind of things that are going to happen to many of the students, especially the ones that you're trying to help. And I just think that relationships and having at least one solid counselor or a professor or someone at the university level that will be able to say, come and talk to me. You got a problem, you have an issue, you're struggling, please come and talk to me. Because what you don't want is don't want that first year student who comes from a family that's never had anybody go to college. You do not want that one to drop out for lack of support. And that's going to be very, very key to this whole thing with COVID. I think once COVID is over with and people can get more into the bigger scene of college, whether it's fraternity life or whether it's sports or whether it's just, dorm parties and that kind of stuff, that's going to come, but that's going to be down the road. This is very, very important now to show that they have the support.
Father, I just wanted to add that as you get older, hopefully you get wiser and you realize that you don't want to lose friendships. And I know I still have, not many, but some fraternity brother friends. By the way, I was in Delta Tau Delta, the same as Ed Whitaker. I was at George Washington, he was at Texas Tech. Those are precious relationships, and we've been trying to keep each other's spirits up. So those first year relationships, and when you hold on to them for 40 years, become extended family. John, do we have some other folks ready to ask questions?
We do.
John,
I think
okay.
Arturo has a question.
Okay, and Arturo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim. Father David, thank you for sharing your knowledge, your time, and your stories today. These are fantastic. My name is Arturo Burgueño, and I serve at the Board of Directors of the Master's Leadership Program Alumni Association. Now, the Master's Leadership Program's mission is to prepare proven leaders for nonprofit board service and to provide them opportunities to build a better San Antonio. And the Alumni Association's mission is simply to continue learning together to serve our nonprofit community. Now, as Jim mentioned, there are more than 6,000 nonprofit organizations in San Antonio. So there are many good causes and organizations to choose from. Now, the question is, how do you recommend that a person choose an organization that is a good fit to volunteer their time for?
I think there's two aspects to this. The question you're asking is, how do I, from the outside, choose an organization that I want to give? And to me, that's that's something that is going to be a number of things. Number one, you start from your heart. What are you passionate about? What could I really not just give a donation, but maybe possibly give some volunteer time, learn more what they're about, promote them, help them raise money down the road, that kind of thing. And you're just going to have to kind of dig down. And of course, you want to do some study about it. Which ones of the nonprofits are well run? That if they are raising money, that the money is well spent, that they have credibility, that they have accountability, that they have transparency, those kinds of things when you're actually zooming in on a particular organization. But I think the first thing is you follow with your heart. And the second thing I think is, all things being equal, you prefer those that work directly with the poor, especially in this community, because this community of San Antonio is the most economically segregated in the country of all the major cities, and that's not something to be proud of. And so to me, if we can make a difference in terms of the poor of San Antonio, then we will make a significant difference in the entire community. That's why, for example, during COVID, I'm so glad that the city is using some of those care funds from the federal government on COVID for job training. Because if they get job training for people, a job that exists today that's going to pay a good living wage or better, then we will have taken this pandemic and gotten something really good out of it to raise the level of our community for everybody. So I think that's a very, very important thing. From the point of view of the nonprofit, how are you going to sell what you're doing to others? And like I said, you have to get out there. You have to tell your story. I ended up becoming friends with a lot of media people so that I could pick up the phone or send an email and tell them a story or get them onto a story. And I got to know what they were looking for so that I could pitch the story that would hit them and say, yeah, that's a good one. And I'd like to tell that story. So I was in the media a lot, and San Fernando was, and the missions were. And when you have a high profile, then the asking is easier, because people say, oh yeah, I heard about that on the radio, or I saw that on the TV, I read about it in the paper, whatever it was, I got it on the internet. Then you're a couple of steps ahead. So I think the two pieces of it would be, number one, how do I choose? Number two, how do I position my nonprofit group so that someone will choose me? And I position it by telling my story, by being accountable and transparent, and letting people know where the money is going, and the money is making a difference, and that they will be making a difference if they join us and be part of it.
You were in the media. I think Rabbi Stahl liked referring to you as a rock star. But anyway, John, I think we have time for one more question from the audience. Do we have?
We do. We've got a question from Charlotte Ann.
Okay, Charlotte Ann Lucas.
Hello, Father David. I'm Charlotte Ann Lucas. I've been a journalist since there were manual typewriters in newsrooms, and I confess I've been taking a lot of notes this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. I'm executive director of Nowcast SA. It's San Antonio's trustworthy, independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization, sort of like a local C-SPAN or public television on the internet. And our mission is to promote an inclusive civic conversation. And we look at that as journalism that strengthens democracy. We're gearing up right now to live stream virtual candidate forums for all the local elections, hoping to inspire people to get their butts out and vote in this most consequential election. I have a question for you. As in the news right now, it's almost exclusively about COVID all the time. I know. I'm editing those stories and publishing those stories. Would you like us in the news media to provide more attention to other news as well, or more attention to something? Absolutely.
I don't know if you follow. I follow the Express News. I take the hard copy every day, and it allows me to have the internet copy anytime I want to. But somewhere shortly after the COVID thing and the Corona thing started big news, there used to be a faith pull-out edition of the Express News. And they would cover faith issues nationally as well as locally. When the COVID came, they did away with that, and now the pull-out issue is more of a business kind of thing. And then we were reduced to 2 pages, mostly off of the religious news wire, meaning very little local religious coverage. I complained to the Express News and I complained to the interfaith group of religious leaders here, and trying to see if they could tell the Express News and others, there are stories to be told. There are people that are constantly out there making a difference from the religious point of view. And they're people of faith, they're people of commitment. They're doing absolutely astounding work, and often not recognized, often not seen. Their stories need to be told, because especially at a time of COVID, when people are discouraged and kind of like, we don't see any end in sight, to be able to see the courageous stories of people in this community. And I like to see through the lens of religion, but there's lens of a lot of other things, nonprofits and community organizations, etc. But when you begin to see the stories of people, and you don't have to say it's COVID related, there's good things going on all over the place. And some of it is related to COVID and some of it is not. Where are those stories? And again, from my point of view, religion has been kind of diminished, and our role in the COVID thing, I think, in my opinion, has been very high. But even aside from COVID, we're still doing the day-to-day everything. We're still baptizing the babies and marrying people and burying the dead and consoling the sick and those who are struggling. Those are human stories that need to be told, that lift up the whole community. Where are those stories? Who's telling them? And how can we get them out there so that people will feel the impact of that and be inspired maybe to do something themselves?
Thank you, Charlotte. And Father David, we're pretty much on schedule. What I'd like to do now is to kind of do Jim's wrap up, and I'm going to bring you, you're not finished yet. I'm going to bring you in and out of the conversation. It's been a very rich one. And I think I'm hearing too that to the extent that we all can share a positive story, and you know, we have a lot of unsung heroes. Yeah, we have today people delivering the food, the people that are working in the pharmacies, the people that are our health providers. I don't know their names. Well, let me tell you, they are unsung heroes. And I think a lot of the people involved in our nonprofits that are, their mission continues. And you said especially to help the poor. I'm thinking of the food bank. Tell those stories. Tell those stories on your websites. I think one of the biggest points that I like what you said, Father David, you know, we ask, and they're not saying no to Jim Eskin or Father David Garcia. They're saying no, not even to the organization. They're saying no to the project at a particular time. So please keep in mind that the rejection is never personal. I like to say, are you a baseball fan, Father David?
Occasionally. I can't say I'm a big fan.
Well, you know, I'm from Boston, so I love the Red Sox, who are having a terrible season, by the way, but that's another story. In baseball, if you get a hit 1 out of 3 times at the plate, guess what? You go to Cooperstown. You get into the Hall of Fame. I like to say the same thing for a professional or volunteer fundraiser. If you go to the plate and make enough ass and get 1 out of 3, I bet you your campaigns will be successful. The Father talked about that we can get giving at all different levels in the business. We both had, my slides moving back and forth. We had, so I'm going to leave it. We had a pyramid there. And, you know, probably, I remember, Father, that your initial goal, you went past it, was 15 million with San Fernando. I remember that presentation, and you looked at Ed Whitaker in the eyes, and he said something, oh, I guess you want me to be that lead gift to 5 million. And you said yes, and he said yes. And you did that as you're talking about big gifts like this don't happen overnight. And we don't nurture relationships, we nurture friendships. You know, I once heard a relationship is something you have until something better comes along. We nurture friendships, they last for a life. We were talking, you know, per capita, our income is far from very high as a major metropolitan city. We don't have a lot of Fortune 500 companies. That's not prevented this city becoming very generous. Tomorrow, Father, is the Big Give, which originally was going to be March, and it's been rescheduled for tomorrow. And it's an opportunity to start making gifts online. There's a lot of matches and fun components to it. And the gifts begin as small as $10. So consider that. And you can get the pick from hundreds of nonprofits. Everybody can make a difference with their gifts of time and money. Two big success stories for the father was raising something like 21 million for San Fernando Cathedral, something like 19 million, am I close, for the old Spanish missions. And I think one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about, you talked about the interfaith cooperation. On those two projects, 60%, is that right, of the gifts came from what was identified as non-Catholic sources?
Yes, that's true. We really worked hard to make the two projects community projects, and there was ways that we did that, and that'd be another seminar, but yeah, we did that.
And you said too, you know, you got your project's visibility, you develop personal, not relationships, friendships with members of the media, and that media coverage was kind of a free PR campaign, wasn't it?
You know, the media, you got to realize they're often not thanked for their work. Most of the time, what they get from people is criticism if they didn't like the article or if they thought that the article will hurt them. So the media need to be thanked, and we would invite them once a year to the cathedral to be blessed. And I would get there and bless them at the end of Mass. I would throw holy water on them, and it would sizzle a little bit, but that was okay, you know. They got blessed, and they appreciated it, and I had friends after that from there. That's very, very important.
Well, you keep on saying you're not a professional fundraiser, but he had, Father David, when he was soliciting gifts, had one huge advantage over everyone. What was that, Father?
Well, I ultimately could threaten them with hell.
I gotta tell you, how do I teach that to my clients? And you also could promise heaven, couldn't you?
Why not? That's our goal, all of us.
So we're wrapping up here, but we're talking, first of all, never take the no personally. And I don't care how good you are. If you're Jim Eskin or Father Garcia, you're going to hear the word no, you know? And don't take it personally. You want to maximize the opportunities to get your story told through the media. And again, San Antonians have this wonderful characteristic of being generous beyond their means.
Jim, can I throw a little point in right here?
You bet you can.
You know who some of the best and greatest philanthropists in San Antonio are? The hardworking people who send remittances home to their families in Mexico, Central America, Africa, East Asia. Those people who take a third of their salary, maybe, and it's not a great salary, and send it home. That's a philanthropist, because they are giving to those that need it the most, and they know who they are. And they are all over San Antonio. That spirit is all over San Antonio.
And again, I think we can and should be proud that San Antonians, they give beyond their means. They dig deeper and deeper into their pockets. And so we're going to end up here. We got about 90 seconds left. Our advice to all your nonprofits is, the Father said, your missions continue, okay? And you have very important roles to play. You serve people in need. And so we're telling you, do not take your foot off the gas pedal. Do not delay. Don't take a time out. Keep on asking. Keep on asking. Philanthropy is resilient. And by the way, this is interesting. The number one predictor of the philanthropy, Father, is the stock market. And we're actually seeing the stock market and philanthropy hold up stronger than it did during the recession of 08, 09. And we're going to wrap up here. And by the way, we were talking about keeping in contact with people. Father, it's easier. One of the biggest problems I had was scheduling the appointments, but particularly the real important people like Ed Whitaker. Guess what? People are more available now, and you can use the different media to give them hugs. And if you are board members out there, we need you to lead by example. And by the way, Father David talked about the importance of warm introductions. You can get a three-way video chat where you might have a board member who knows Mr. Big Potatoes, and he arranges the Zoom call, and you get the CEO of the nonprofit on a three-way call. And you can have board members open the doors. You can never say thank you too much. And the one thing I caution, man, we're all spending a lot of time in front of the computer screen, and they're calling it the computer screen fatigue. So maybe sometimes if you talk to someone, seen them, you know, in a video conference, you just want to talk at that point at an audio. And so the women don't have to put their makeup on. The guys don't have to get out of their gym clothes. I better stop there. I think, again, a real important point, and we're wrapping up here, Father, this is going to come to an end. And it's going to come to the end because we're all going to be there for each other. And we are going to work. We're in a hole, and we're going to dig our way out of the hole in the best spirit of this country, and that's working together. So I would like to thank Father David Garcia. By the way, Father, you kind of threatened with the with hell. I'm trying to tell everyone, this is Eskin's guarantee. Your chances of getting the gift go way up when you ask. So ask. Father David, may you remain healthy, and I hope to see you on your bicycle. And again, thank you for the service. You have not just provided your faith, but you have provided every citizen of San Antonio. You are a community leader that we will continue to look up to. So thank you for all your wonderful contributions to the community.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I believe very, very much that we're never going to be happy until we are grateful and generous. And when we can do those two things, we have a happy life.
I'm going to make a slide out of that, Father. Thank you. And I want to thank John Largent, CEO of our Game Day Media. So this is what's happening on social media. My wife, Andrea, is taking some notes, is going to post a summary on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then John Largent, thank you, as our producer, is going to go do a cycle and make a recording of the remarks and all the slides available, and we will post that on social media. Father David, please stay safe. To our attendees, please stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Father David.
Thank you.